Welcome back to Draft Nights. It's been a little bit. I had finals, Sam has had some work, but we're so excited to be back and talking about some very, very exciting players today. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I love the player we're about to talk about. I'm excited to get into it. And yeah, it's great to be back. My
So,
goodness, the weather's finally nice. I decided to take it outside for the day,
yeah.
see what happens. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, very unique locations. I'm back home, you're outside, it's just an exciting time. So, starting it off, this is not the player that we're excited to talk about, but it's the player that everyone's got to talk about. It is Diego Pavia, who, had some good luck finally after not being drafted. He is now signing a 3-year contract with the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, he got what he wanted. He's an NFL quarterback. You know, I had so much respect for him until he started his Heisman arguments. Um, And if I'm going to be honest, he's not a Heisman QB, and that's okay. All right, you're not on the
What?
level of Fernando Mendoza, and that's all right. But yeah, he's going to be a great backup in the NFL for a little while. Looking forward to it.
I
Hope
mean,
to hear his name like twice in the next 3 years.
I just hope that, I don't know. There was something about the way that he wanted to be Johnny Manziel so bad, but he just wasn't Johnny Manziel. Besides the fact that he's maybe 5'8", like on a good day, maybe. Just the training camp footage from the Ravens camp is look it up. It's so funny. I don't want to dog on this guy. I mean, he just got a big payday, but man, he looks tiny out there.
I mean, give the guy a lot of credit. He took the Vanderbilt team to a very impressive year. Um, that being said, the idea that he tried to compare himself to Fernando Mendoza so confidently, and I love the confidence, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if he was quite at that level yet. I just feel
There's
like he had a little bit more to go.
there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness, and just man, I don't know. There was just something so unlikable about him. But I hope for him all the best in the NFL for how long he'll be in the NFL. I would be very surprised if we ever see him take a snap. To be honest,
I
I
think he'll
feel
take a
like
snap or two. I don't think
maybe
we're
in
going to see.
preseason.
I think, yeah, he'll have a couple of preseason plays, and then I don't know. I feel like there's potential for him in the future. Not in the next 3 years would be my guess, but you never know. Maybe we'll see like a 32-year-old Diego Pavia just starting for some team that needs a lot of help.
I
We'll
don't
see
know
what
if he'll be.
happens.
I don't even know if he'd be able to throw over the O line.
It'd be tough. It'd be tough. But hey, Kyler Murray made it work.
It's like
So
some Attack on Titan stuff.
anything is possible.
It's just at the bottom, just the defensive line, just the Titans coming in on him. But man, moving on, do you want to just jump right into the player that we're, I think,
I
both
love that idea.
exceptionally
I
excited to
love
talk
that
about?
idea.
Especially considering how much there is to talk about with his new draft position. I think it's time to talk about Jeremiah Love.
I love that. I love that. I love Jeremiah Love. Uh, I said it in previous episodes before. Genuinely, if not my favorite, then easily top three favorite player in the draft. He's just that guy. He is so cool. I love him, and we'll get into a little bit more where he is now in the NFL, and whether we agree with that or not. But just as a player himself, I think this guy is next level talent.
Absolutely. I honestly, I before I started really looking into the film, I thought he was just he's a pretty solid running back. Like he's really good, but I mean the stats don't super jump out at you compared to like a Bajan Robinson, a Saquon Barkley when they were an Ashton Genty when they were in college. But man, you just have to watch it. You have to. He is a player that you watch and you're like, oh yeah, he's got it.
Yeah, I mean, he really is one of those players where you kind of have to watch the tape a little bit. The stats, don't get me wrong, are wildly impressive. 13 over 1,300 rush yards last year. or sorry, yards last year. But to just watch this guy's tape is just next level. It's insane. And
It's absurd.
everybody, I feel like at this point, has seen the video of him just breaking through, fighting for every
Hmm.
yard to, I don't, I'm going to blank on what game it is, but to score the touchdown. Um,
Yeah.
but my goodness, watching tape for this guy
It was against
is
Penn State, right?
unreal. Yeah, it was. You're right.
Yeah. So, getting into the little bit of a history for Jeremiah Love, he was a 4-star. He was offered by pretty much everyone coming out of high school. He stayed at Notre Dame all three years. He never transferred. And last season, his stats were he had 1,372 yards rushing, 18 touchdowns with 6.9 yards per carry. He had 280 yards receiving, which, like, again, the numbers, while they're good compared to the other, like, star-studded college running backs that we've been talking about in recent years, they're not exactly, like, explosive. They're not the Genty almost breaking the college rushing yards record. However, looking at him like a little bit more as a player, he's only 20 years old, so very young coming out of the draft. He's 6 foot tall, 212 pounds, so he's got enough strength and size to really battle through. But then there's more to his game than just a bruiser. In fact, it's not even his main skill.
No, I mean, when you look at his stats, they're wildly impressive, but I feel like you really have to compare them to other players to really understand just how impressive it is. He has the eighth most rushing yards in the NCAA from last year, sitting, like you said, at 1,372. But he has 199 or he had 199 rush attempts. To get to the next person with the highest rush yards and still under 200 rushing attempts, you have to go down to 20. So there are two people in the top 20, and he's sitting at 8. To put into perspective how efficient this guy is and how effective he is unbelievable. You said 6.9 yards per carry, but he's just unreal. He had 21 touchdowns throughout the entire season. It was 18 for rushing, 3 receiving. To get receiving touchdowns as a college wide receiver is that much more
Hmm.
impressive, but to put up 18 touchdowns, 121 points throughout the entire year, that's just next level.
Yeah, and adding on, mentioning his rushing attempts, his teammate, his like rushing duo, Jadarian Price, got drafted in the first round to the Seattle Seahawks. Price last season had 674 yards and 11 touchdowns on 6 yards per carry. So it wasn't like Jeremiah Love was the sole offense. He was a dual back. He was playing not every single down, which might have like it obviously contributed to his stats. But I think it's also going to make him more durable in the NFL. That's a lot less mileage under those wheels. He's going to be able to play longer, I think. And along with just how his play style will allow him to be a more long-term running back than you typically see, I really think his honestly unselfishness. Obviously, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but there's a certain unselfishness to allow for your co-star to really like shine and again get drafted in the first round, same as you did.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I do want to fact check myself. 126 points, so even more impressive.
Hmm.
He averaged 11.4 per game. That's over a touchdown per game,
Gosh.
which is just outrageous. To your point, though, about really like sharing the wealth, I think what's also really nice about that is that that means he's had the competition. He's had to win his spot, and he didn't win it until his second year at Notre Dame. This guy didn't just come in immediately playing every snap. And that's going to be important for him, especially as he goes to the Cardinals, where they already
Hmm.
have a couple of good running backs that he'll be
Absolutely.
competing with in his first year.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation to get to when we start talking about the Cardinals themselves and how their offseason has gone to set up for Jeremiah Love. But just getting into the film for Love, just right out of the way, I think first and foremost, we have to talk about his speed and agility. There are very few running backs that I've watched that made me go, holy shit, as many times as Jeremiah Love did. It is like his ability to move laterally and keep his momentum and keep moving, to be able to use his vision and just find lanes that no one else should be able to get to is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, the guy ran a 4.3640. He started off 4.37, so he was slow out the gate for sure. Um, and then immediately improving it. Just the speed of this guy and how quickly he can get up to speed is just as impressive. A lot of running backs these days, they take a little bit of time to really get up to their full speed. This guy is out of the gates and moving immediately. And then as soon as he gets up to speed, he's just all over the place. Now, a lot of people look at it as a weakness that he leaves his feet. He kind of plays dangerous.
He does,
But
it's
I actually
true.
think that's a strength because I feel like it's very easy to kind of take that back. It's really hard to teach that. And so, yeah, you might see, especially in preseason, him trying to do things that you don't really want your running back doing just in terms of taking risks. But that's something that's much easier to teach down rather than to teach up. It's much easier to tell somebody, hey, don't take that risk rather than, hey, I want you to go airborne in the NFL and just hope that you don't get hit too hard.
Yeah. Honestly, I think his most impressive skill, kind of building on that like mobility and maybe a little bit more risky play, is if you watch this film enough, you'll notice it. His ability to make diagonal cuts. So typically with a lot of like considered agile running backs compared to power backs, you'll see them typically when they make a cut or a juke move, it's typically side to side. They'll try to move out of the way from someone and then keep moving forward. What Jeremiah Love does, that's absurd. It's like crazy to watch. Is if a defender's coming at him, instead of having to move to the side, he goes diagonally and then keeps going, which allows him to maintain his forward momentum and like keep getting yards after the contact or after the contest. Because typically with those like juking running backs, you'll see a lot of fans constantly being like, why don't you just go forward? Stop going side to side. Jeremiah Love doesn't go side to side. He still goes forward while making those moves.
And I think another thing that's worth mentioning when you talk about him kind of moving diagonally is how strong he is. This guy is the type of player that can take a defender with him. He's not a huge dude. He's 6 foot 212, like you said, but he is so incredibly strong. All you have to do is watch the tape, and you can immediately see it. This is a guy who's going to be able to navigate his way through the NFL in just his first year, and to have somebody on your team that is so young and yet so capable and so full of potential, that's just going to be an incredible asset for the Cardinals.
Yeah, definitely not a power back, of course, but just because he's not a true power back doesn't mean that he's weak. His contact balance, especially at the line of scrimmage, trying to get through the running lanes, very impressive. He doesn't really get moved off of his spots, especially when he's making cuts. What you'll typically see is the like elusive or like the like juking running back when they like make their move and then they get hit. That can be pretty devastating. You see a lot of fumbles. You'll see some some poor decision making, or they'll lose yards. Jeremiah Love is able to make those more risky moves, get hit, and keep going. Or when he's in open field, he's able to get like clipped on his ankle, can get shoved a little bit, and not lose momentum, and not just like stop churning his feet in order to get to the end zone.
He really is the perfect mix of like a speed running back as well as a power running back. And that's something that doesn't come around very often. That's why so few running backs are taken that early in the draft. You look at that list that he's joining, you got players like Saquon Barkley. They're built the same way. They're speed running backs, but they're so strong. And I mean, when you look at Saquon, a little bit more power in him. I think Jeremiah Love has even more speed in him. That just allows him for even more potential and even more growth in the NFL.
Absolutely. And another really key skill that he has that you don't see from a lot of running backs is his receiving. So he actually had a lot of reps at slot wide receiver, especially when Jadarian Price was in, because the staff at Notre Dame noticed how great his hands are for catching. He's able to make some really impressive catches and add another weapon to the offense. Because you see, a Saquon Barkley, as great as he is not good at catching the ball. He is not a receiving back. But for Jeremiah Love, he's not just a receiving back. They play him in wide receiver positions. That's just how much of an athlete this guy is.
Yeah, I mean, he put up 27 receptions just last year. He put up 28 the year before that. To be able to have 1,300 rushing yards and on top of that, 280 receiving yards is out of this world, especially in college. And like you were saying, this isn't like he was, getting a bunch of screen passes and just taking it up the field. This guy is a really solid receiver. And to have a running back come in that's just fantastic on all sides of the ball, strength, speed, reception, and rushing, that's so impressive. It's incredibly clear why the Cardinals took him so early, whether you agree with the pick or not. You can't deny the talent.
Yeah, just the pure athletic dominance. And when it comes to taking running backs early, which I think we'll get to in a second, he's just like you can build your offense around this guy. This is such a clear-cut future Pro Bowler, future All-Pro potentially, who can really take an offense from to take their floor to a really high level. We've seen other running backs do that recently. Now, again, like we mentioned, his durability and his lack of reps. Some might say the lack of reps could be an issue, him not having as many snaps and maybe not learning as much against the lesser competition of college football. But compared to other recent early picked running backs, Bijan Robinson had 539 carries in college. Ashton Jeanty had 750. Jeremiah Love only had 433, and he was still taken third overall.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's hard to make an argument in a way for that, because especially when you're taking a player as high as they took Jeremiah Love, you really need to be confident in him. But I really think in that situation, I just have to say, go back and look at the tape once again. I mean, you can say, his stats aren't perfect coming out of college, but there is no denying the effectiveness of this man. And, you really look at him, you see that he's dominant on all sides of the ball. And so whether he has as many reps or not, I think just you have to look at his actual play and recognize that this is a guy that you need on your team.
Now, before we start talking about the justification or how good or bad of a pick it was for the Cardinals, I think we should talk about just taking running backs early in the first round in general. So, generally speaking, this has been a large topic of conversation, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When you look at the list of running backs that were taken early, almost all of them delivered.
True. Very true.
On the flip side, sometimes I feel like it took a little bit of time for them to adapt, or in the case of Saquon Barkley, I love the Giants. Giants weren't the right fit for him. Yeah. So it can be risky only in the sense that sometimes they need to adapt a little bit more, and if they are put onto the wrong team, then it's just not going to work out. But you look at a player like Leonard Fournette or Ezekiel Elliott, both of them super dominant in their early years, and when they found the right team, especially for Elliott and for Fournette when he was on the Jaguars, they're really dominant. And so in that sense, I'm not against the idea of taking a running back early. You just have to be super confident with who you're taking, and you need to be sure that your team can work with him.
So looking at some recent early drafted running backs, and when we say early drafted, we're talking like top 15. You're looking at Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Ashton Jeanty. Those are typically the people that are brought up when we talk about Jeremiah Love getting taken. And in a lot of ways, though, like you mentioned, those guys have all delivered. But not always for the team that drafted him and not always immediately. Look at Saquon. Struggled in a lot of years, both with injuries and just the fact that the Giants had a terrible O-line. They had no other offensive options. Saquon Barkley was their only weapon. Don't worry, I'm getting to my team in a second. And when he left, 2K yards, wins the Super Bowl, was their clear best player on offense. And then you look at Jahmyr Gibbs. Goes to a team that has a second running back in David Montgomery. He has arguably the best offensive line in the league during his first couple of seasons. He has Ben Johnson as his play caller that's using him creatively, and he makes an immediate impact, and he's still considered one of the best in the league. But now, on the flip side, looking at, again, the more early struggles, you look at Bijan Robinson. Clearly amazing right out of the gate. In my opinion, the best running back in football right now. I am biased, of course. But
just a little bit.
His first season, he kind of struggled because the Falcons had no passing attack. We struggled to really make creative looks for him, just like we did this last season, despite his production. And then look at Ashton Genty this last year. He gets drafted to the Raiders. Again, horrific offensive line. They have no quarterback at all. They have very limited receiving threats. Even Brock Bowers was injured for most of the year. And he struggled. For a lot of the season, he had more yards after his yards after contact was higher than his yard. I forget the exact stat, but he was basically getting hit by defenders the second he got to the line of scrimmage. It was absurd.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a lot of these players who I think top 15 is just so different from a top 5 pick. I zoom in a little bit more on those types of players, and that's why I brought up, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, because I think taking a running back top 15, that's a very natural thing. That's, a team that maybe or a team that maybe finished solid in the regular season, but not great. They need a weapon, and their passing is great, but their running is garbage. So they need a running back. When you're looking at a team that's in the top 5 for picks, that's a team that needs a lot of work. And so to start with a running back, you have to build your team around your running back. The Cowboys were pretty much able to do it with Ezekiel Elliott. Now, they're the Cowboys. They're never going to win it all. But, they did their best with Ezekiel Elliott. But when you take, different players, when they flop hard, they flop really hard. Yeah. Saquon Barkley just didn't help the Giants. He wasn't the guy that they needed. They needed a better base.
Leonard Fournette was also not, amazing on the Jags.
Exactly. He himself, very solid. The Jags still weren't able to do that much because they didn't have the base that they needed. The question is whether the Cardinals have the base that they need to take Jeremiah Love so early in the draft. And personally, I just have to say there's no way. They weren't ready for a running back yet.
And another aspect of it, so someone who might not follow football or the NFL as much might hear, the guys that we just mentioned that were drafted really early, the running backs drafted really early, they were all incredibly successful. That's a lot of Pro Bowls, that's a lot of All-Pros. But the reason why it is generally considered to be a huge risk to draft a running back that early is that running backs, typically speaking, start falling off in production by the midpoint to maybe the early point of their second contract. Now, a wide receiver, a lineman, a defensive end, a quarterback, you go down the list of these other highly valuable positions, they can maybe last in their prime up until the midpoint of their third contract. So when you are drafting a running back, it hurts to say, because especially, again, these are real people who, they are, deserving of praise for how amazing they are. But, you really don't see a lot of running backs stay in their prime past maybe 30, maybe 31-ish. And so when you're drafting a player, especially as early as you are expected to build for the future. And if you have a player whose prime is on a shorter clock, that if you're picking early, can you build to that point to take advantage of their prime?
Yeah, And I think this is one of the areas where actually Jeremiah Love will thrive because he's so young. You look at some of the players from the draft, they're getting up there in age, 24, 25 even. Those are older players, and that's just because college football has changed so much that that's possible. A player like Jeremiah Love really is that young player who still can enter his
Hmm.
prime. Now, if he's playing with an O line that lets him get hit that hard time and time again, then no. Obviously, he's not going to make it that long. You just can't physically do that. But he's starting in a really good spot because he's still young enough, but he also still has that experience from college. He
Hmm.
might not have as many reps, like you were saying, but he is kind of a veteran in terms of college play. He's ready for the NFL. And because of that, I think it's time for him to get drafted. And I think that taking him when he's so young and so ready to go, that's going to maybe give him 1 or 2 more years that could really be fortunate and beneficial for the Cardinals.
Yeah. All right. I think it's about time. I think it's a good segue into talking about the Cardinals, their future with Jeremiah Love, and the immediate next season. So, some immediate stats. The Cardinals were 31st in rushing yards per game last season at only 93.1. That is horrific. In the offseason, they did bring in a new offensive lineman. They brought in Isaac Semualo from the Steelers. So trying to beef up that O line, which was again very bad, especially considering that they were drafting a running back in the top three. However, let's look at that running back room immediately for next season. They got Tyler Algier, rest in peace, Falcons legend, for 2 years, $12.25 million. They got James Conner on the last year of his deal at 1 year, $2.3 million. And they got Trey Benson at 4 years, $6.1 million. That is now 4 running backs that are arguably running back ones, all in
And
the
don't
same.
forget, they also have Kyler Murray, who is a rushing
Whoa!
QB. I'm going to give it to him. I'm
No,
going
no,
to give
no,
it
no,
to
no.
him.
They
Okay,
don't
all right,
have
continue,
they don't
continue.
have Kyler Murray.
Oh, shoot. They
He's
don't.
on the
You're right.
Vikings.
Nope, they don't. I take it back. Oh, my goodness. Disregard. Holy.
But like their running back room is very full, which immediately you could say, I think 2 different ways. You could say the positive is, hey, Jeremiah Love isn't going to have like a crazy workload. He's not going to be Saquon on the Giants, like thrust into it and just like, hey, take all the beating because we don't have an offensive line. Do your best because they'll be able to sub him out for a Trey Benson, for a Tyler Algier. But on the other hand, now you're like, well, that's a year of his rookie deal. That's a year of a prime running back. That's just, where is this going to go? Like, is he going to be splitting carries with these guys because they're getting paid too? They're going to want it, but also he's a top 3 pick.
Yeah, they talked about it in the draft a little bit, and one analyst I think said it best, which is great player, garbage pick.
Yes.
And I think that's difficult because a player like Jeremiah Love only comes around once every couple of years. And so when you see him on the board, you really do have to go get him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they really just didn't need him. And especially when you're a team that, has the 3rd pick in the draft, you're going to need things that aren't just running backs.
Very
And
true.
so I just don't know if he was the guy that they needed. You just mentioned all their running backs. I mentioned a non-existent running back for them. Like they're set to go in terms of the running back room. Now, for how much longer, I'm not sure because, all of their running backs are getting up there a little bit in age. They're a little bit out of their prime, but nonetheless, they
Respect
are
Tyler
still
Algier.
sorry.
Show some respect.
They
Falcons
are
legend.
still a very solid running back team. But where they're not solid is their O-line. And as much as I hate to say it, because, we've mentioned this in some previous podcasts, O-linemen aren't always the most exciting players to get in a draft. You don't typically see a ton of fans going out and buying O-lineman jerseys. But that is the foundation
real
of a team
fans.
right there. Only real fans. I'll give that to you. But that is really the foundation of the team. And you can't do anything. We saw it with the Giants. You can't do anything with a great running back if his own line can't do anything.
But I mean, they have recently taken a lot of O linemen in the draft in the recent years, mainly to protect Kyler Murray when he was there. But you know, I think their
Who
idea
says he's
is,
gone? Who says he's gone?
I don't know, maybe the Vikings. It's okay, but you know,
You might hope so. It's fine. Moving on.
you know, I think their thinking is we drafted all these young O linemen. We're keeping it consistent. We brought in a new offensive lineman. We're solid with the core. We're gonna hope that these players develop and that they're gonna give Jeremiah Love the best possible place to succeed. But at the same time, I think it's important to recognize how many flaws this Cardinals team had. It is not crazy that Jeremiah Love went this early. In fact, the most overwhelming, like the place that he was mocked to go the most was the Tennessee Titans at pick 4. Like, it was not crazy that he was going this high. What was crazy was that it was the Cardinals that were taking him. The Cardinals were 26 overall in defense. They very much struggled on defense. Their big signing Hassan Reddick struggled a lot, despite how talented he is. I don't think he was the right player for them. And Buda Baker is getting up there in age. They have so many holes on defense.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to that point. The Cardinals needed a lot, and I just don't know if a running back was at the top of that list. I love Jeremiah, love just as a player, and I think that he will be talented and he will bring a positive impact to any team that he goes to. But I don't know if he will be the most helpful at the Cardinals. You look at a team like the Titans, I think they would have benefited from him a lot more. But don't get me wrong, the Cardinals are still going to be able to make the most of him if they play it right. They now have to build their offense around a running back. And that's a difficult thing to do, but it is a possible thing to do.
You know, especially talking about that, looking at their offense, there is one glaring hole, which I think you might have brought up. Who is going to play quarterback for them?
Not Kyler Murray.
It's not Kyler Murray, that's for sure. But looking again at the recent early picked running backs, when the Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson, we had Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Last season, the Raiders had Geno Smith. And who did even the Giants have? It was the ghost of Eli Manning when they drafted.
Yeah, that would have been the tough days.
Yeah, and so when you draft these going to Daniel Jones, drafting these.
He showed up eventually.
Yeah, for the Colts. When you draft a running back this high, and they don't have the quarterback support, the entire defense is just going to be like, okay, we're just going to stop the run. We're going to sell out to stop the run because we know that you can't throw. And we look at the Cardinals quarterback situation, and they got Jacoby Brissett, and they got, I know that they drafted, to the detest of a lot of Georgia fans, they drafted, oh my goodness, why am I blanking? Carson Beck. They drafted Carson Beck, and they picked up Gardner Minshew in free agency. So that's not a three.
Let's also not hate on Gardner Minshew. Okay?
I'm not hating on Gardner Minshew.
Has so much talent.
I love his mustache.
Love that man. All right.
But
same with Jacoby Brissett. He has the potential. It hasn't been there in the past.
Is Jacoby Brissett going to take you to a Super Bowl?
You know, that's a good question.
And my point is not even to really hammer in and hate on any of these quarterbacks. My point is that when you draft a running back this high and you don't have the quarterback foundation, they struggle a lot more than you'd expect. But at the same time, they lift you up enough in the draft process so that you're not going to be in a position to take a top 3 quarterback, which is really franchise defining. Again, the Giants, they took Daniel Jones at 8. If Saquon Barkley isn't there, maybe they're picking top 1, top 2. You look at the Falcons. We weren't in position to take one of the premier picks. As much as I love Michael Penix, we, without Bijan Robinson, would have, because of how good he was, would have been in position to take a Caleb Williams. a Jaden Daniels, a Drake May. This is what happens with running back. They raise your floor so high, but if you don't have the quarterback foundation to support them, they're not going to get to your ceiling to be an actually competitive team.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk. And you can look at it as high risk, high reward, but I feel like when you're in that type of position, it's just high risk. The reward is going to show itself earliest, I would say, is 2 years. And just with how fast rookie contracts expire at this point, that is not giving yourself a lot of time to deal with it. I do think that, players know what they're getting into in this type of situation. There's no way that Jeremiah Love is going into this ignorant of the fact that, his team doesn't really have an O-line that he can depend on, for sure. But that being said, I think, again, it goes back to he's so talented. It's hard to pass up on him. There wasn't really another QB type player in the draft, like at that Fernando Mendoza level. I guess Diego Pavia would like to think that he was at that level. Not sure he was there, but, love the enthusiasm. And I love the confidence. But it doesn't change the fact that, a player like Jeremiah Love has to be taken early. He's too good to not be taken early. And especially, I feel like for a GM looking at that and seeing that he's on the board and just knowing how talented he is, it's hard to pass up on that regardless of who else is on your team.
There is the argument, of course. Positional value, sometimes you just got to throw it out the window and just say, look, this is the best player that's available. We're going to take the best player available. It's what the Ravens do all the time, and look how successful that franchise is. But even with that mentality, I don't even know if Jeremiah Love was the best player available. And
I would say I'm too biased to comment on that just because of how much I love Jeremiah Love coming out of college. I would say ask me in, 2 years. Because coming into the draft, or I guess going into the draft, I would have put Jeremiah Love right up there with Fernando Mendoza. I think he's so incredible on all sides of the ball, and that's something that you just never see anymore. And, he's young, he's fast, he's strong. Literally, his tape is the type of thing that you, show high school players to just motivate them. It is outrageous. So, in that sense, I'm a little too biased, I feel like, to mention it. But at the same time, yes, there were some defensive players that were fantastic, still on the draft board, and the Cardinals,
pretty much
said,
all of them.
Exactly, right.
All but one.
And the Cardinals still said no. So, an interesting choice for sure, yeah.
I just think when you look at the draft, to be fully honest, if you haven't seen our previous episodes, my favorite player coming out of the draft was Caleb Downs. And safety is another position that you hear a lot of talk about positional value. You hear the same way that you do about running back. Caleb Downs went 12th overall, even though obviously it's just my opinion, but it also in the opinion of a lot of analysts, he was the best player on that Ohio State defense. A lot of people had him as the number one player coming out of the draft, not just me. But he went so low because of the perceived positional value of safeties. I personally disagree with it, but then it's a similar situation with the perceived positional value of running backs. And I just look at this and I go, if not Caleb Downs, why not an Arvell Reese? Why not a Sonny Styles? Why not a defensive player who can really be a cornerstone of your defense, which has been so bad? And again, I hate to harp on the defense wins championships because I think it's a very flawed view, as good as it is and as how historically accurate it can be. The fact is, the main leader on that Cardinals defense is entering his mid-30s. Budda Baker is not young anymore. And I think pairing a Budda Baker with a Caleb Downs, maybe if you trade back, if you want to talk positional value, or getting an Arvell Reese or a Sonny Styles, sets the Cardinals up for future success in a way that Jeremiah Love doesn't.
Yeah. It's like you say, defense wins championships, but, defense doesn't always sell tickets. And the Cardinals are at a point where they really need it all. And to walk out of the draft and say we got Jeremiah Love, that's going to get fans excited for sure. And so, yes, I agree with you. A defensive player would likely have been a better pick just in terms of purely how well the team will do. But in terms of morale, which the Cardinals are lacking at this current moment, I think Jeremiah Love had to be that guy because you had to get a player who sparks energy into your team, into your fan base, into everybody. And so, yeah, I fully agree with you in the sense that defensive players would have been smarter. I think Arvell Reese would have been a much better pick for them at the time. Thank God he wasn't, the Giants. But, I think that they needed a spark. And I don't think, with the exception of Fernando Mendoza, I don't think anybody gave off a spark in this draft quite like Love.
I mean, I would argue Caleb Downs did personally, but or maybe Ty Simpson. Just throw that out there.
Yeah, I know how much you just love Ty Simpson.
Yeah, he's so much potential, dude.
I've heard rumors he's gonna make a push for MVP this year.
I've heard rumors that $1 million is gonna fall out of my hands.
I've heard rumors that Ethan Mattingly is gonna run around the entire state of California. So,
no. I said that.
Bay Area.
You know what? How is this? I'll throw just because I brought up the topic. Let's throw up another bet. I will, if Ty Simpson ever wins MVP, I will. No, I'm not gonna. Nope, no more bets. Never mind.
No, I would love to hear this. Actually, go ahead, just for the love of the game.
Just for love, fine. If Ty Simpson ever wins MVP, I will swim to Alcatraz and back with all the sharks.
Just for the love of the game, I just love it.
Just for the love of the game.
No one asked this man to do it, and yet here we are. I love it.
He's such a nothing. Let's get back to Jeremiah Love.
I
brought him.
Wow,
up.
it's a bold pick. I mean, unattainable goals being called out here on Draft Night's podcast.
Just digging this
but
hole.
Yeah, I really respect the commitment to it. I don't think it's possible, but I respect the commitment.
I don't know. I'm looking at the teams that could have drafted Jeremiah Love if the Cardinals didn't pick him. And I feel like they're honestly just so much better situations for all parties involved.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. I think that, we mentioned it before, a team like the Titans really could have benefited from him. I feel like after the Titans, the Giants wouldn't have taken him. It wouldn't have made any sense. But there were a couple of teams where you really feel like he would have fit into place. And that's the one thing that kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. But that being said, I'm so excited to see how he can do in the NFL. And I'm excited to see if he can turn this franchise around. Because, I think it's possible. I think he's talented enough to do it. And now it's kind of up to the Cardinals front office and to the Cardinals offensive line to see if they can put something together and really make it worth it.
It's true. They're clearly trying to make change. They brought in Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator for the Rams, from the McVay tree, a famously successful coaching tree. They're trying to make change. They're trying to get more. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to get more athletic. They've clearly picked a direction. I mean, unfortunately, they're just the Arizona Cardinals, who, all the best of I hope we get to see them. I want to see even more competition from the NFC West. I realized midway through saying that I was throwing a lot of stones from a very glass house, but I got a lot of love for the Cardinals. Last season, I texted my brother and cousins that my bold prediction was that they were going to win 11 games last season, and then they picked top 3, so not a very good prediction from me. I will not be making the same mistake again, But all the best to the Cardinals, all the best to the Cardinals fans. They're going to have a very exciting player to watch. I think every game is going to be a highlight show for them. I just can't wait to see it.
It'll be fun for sure.
And I think with that, we can wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please follow, please give a rating, leave a comment, any of your thoughts. We really love it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again very soon.